I forgot that The Professional was before this movie.
Yeah.
Forgot about that. Yeah. So yeah, Leon the Professional was probably his biggest movie before this. Wow.
That was quite a thunder.
I know.
Was that a sound effect?
No. That was my house. I think my tree just got struck by lightning. Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, and I am your host, and I'm joined as always by my co-host and co-Mandashawan, Matt Freeman. How's it going, Matt?
It's going great, Scott, except that our ship is suddenly under attack by a completely unpredictable and not really foreshadowed assailant. But how are you?
I'm doing really good. We're also joined this week for our very special relaunch by the supreme being themselves, the perfectly engineered creation meant to save the world from movies, I guess. It's Michael Grubb. Michael.
Hey, I only know two languages, English and bad English, huh?
Jokes.
Oh my God, these are great jokes. These are great jokes. Guys, the podcast is back. We've officially relaunched our website. Doof Media is born, and the Doofcast with it. I'm happy to be talking to you guys again on this podcast because I talked to you, on the other things.
Yes, it's a completely different experience now.
Yes, I'm sitting in front of a curved monitor.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the weird, you're at Matt's place right now, so you guys are recording at the same place, which is a little weird.
Yeah, we're using the same pair of earbuds also.
I was thinking about how you were gonna pull that off. That's gotta be uncomfortable. Your heads like right next to each other. That's weird.
Yeah, it's great.
But yeah, so we relaunched the website this week. It's doofmedia.com. You guys listening out there, if you're wondering why the feed that you were subscribed to now has a different name, that's why. And we are going to be changing this podcast around a little bit, Matt. It's not going to be the exact same show that we were doing before. Instead of doing kind of the same thing every week where we do news, main event, and then what we've been watching, we're kind of do segments, and we're going to let each one of us, if we had something we wanted to talk about that week, we're going to do a segment on it. And we're going to do less like new movie reviews and more deep dives into movies, like on this episode.
Cool. Can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, because I guess we should explain the ridiculous things we were talking about at the beginning of the intro, but we are talking about The Fifth Element this week because one of our patrons, the man who was one of our donors at the $20 level, which is now called the Doof Warrior level, guys. But they donated at the $20 level and picked something for us to do a show on, and they asked us to watch and talk about The Fifth Element. So we're going to be doing that.
Who is he now, though?
I don't know. It's just, that's the only information I have.
Yeah,
He was. He was.
Okay. All right.
The man who was, please tweet at Scott Daly with who you are now.
That's great. Yeah, please do that. All right. Before we get into that, though, we've got it is some news. So we're not going to stop covering news on this show, but I think what we decided is instead of like having a set news corner, if a topic comes up that we feel like we want to talk through, we're going to do that. So
what are you going to talk through this week?
So this week I wanted to talk to you guys about James Gunn and his firing, which happened while we were taking a break. And I kind of wanted to use that to get into the topic of social media at large, because social media is a big part of, I guess you could call it entertainment for human beings now. We spend a lot of time on social media. And I wanted to use James Gunn as like a jumping off point to talk about that whole thing.
That sounds good. It's funny you mentioned that because today I went on an unsubscribing and muting rampage because Michael had been asking me about like what's the best social media, and I was like, well, I think Twitter, except the problem with Twitter is like you can make a good experience out of Twitter by following the right people, but then it only takes a couple of bad apples to ruin the barrel or whatever the proverb is.
That is true.
So I was like, okay, well, why don't I just fix that? So I unfollowed a ton of people, and we'll see if that makes it better. But I kind of it's Twitter's the one to be talking about today because James Gunn's firing is the cause of that.
Yeah. So I guess for people, we'll set the stage here for people that don't know, although I think most people do. James Gunn was fired from directing Guardians of the Galaxy 3 based on tweets he sent out 8 to 10 years ago. They were really outrageous, like offensive jokes about pedophilia and rape. And some people got mad at him for talking about Trump on Twitter, and they decided to dig up all these old tweets as an organized campaign to get him in trouble, and it worked. Disney fired him. So I guess here's what I want to talk to you guys about. Like, I think the way we have to set this is, I don't think we need to defend James Gunn's tweets. Like, I don't think his jokes were appropriate, and I think they were offensive. I mean, that's what he was going for. But I think what I want to talk about here is Twitter as this device that takes like a snapshot of a thought and how easy it is to remove that from the context it was delivered in to like destroy people.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting to me is how far we've slid, because when I was a kid and like when the internet was new, the idea was like, okay, first of all, obviously never use your real name on the internet. Only a fool would use your real name on the internet. And you probably want to use a bunch of different aliases, and you probably don't even want to tell too much personal information so people don't figure out who you are. And now it's like everyone uses their real name, including me. And we've become increasingly less cautious about the kinds of things that we say. And I'm really irritated that James Gunn was kind of like witch hunted like this, or however you want to characterize it. Mm-hmm. And I'm also irritated that it was clearly like a ploy to get him fired. And so the fact that the ploy succeeded just means that, yeah, it doesn't matter what the context is. You can get someone fired if you set your mind to it.
It's kind of like faux outrage, right? Like no one was really offended by these things,
right?
That collected them. They were just doing it to get him in trouble because they didn't like him.
Yeah, but it does make me feel like I need to maybe like regress to a previous mindset of how to conduct myself online. Unfortunately, since I like being able to speak my mind on the podcast, for example.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because Michael does not participate in this, but you and I, like, the reason I'm on Twitter for the most part is part of building our brand, and I mostly use it to share our stuff, and then I also share my opinions on Twitter so the people that follow us can see my opinions, and hopefully that spreads the stuff we do. That's the idea. So like, I feel like I have to be on Twitter, and I also hate it. Like all the time, I hate it. Like I sent you a message today because I was furious at Twitter because I tweeted something and got a stupid, pedantic, asinine response that was like, "Why am I doing this? Like, what am I doing?" And it's a really weird thing because I think there are benefits to it. I really do. I think James Gunn is actually a good example, because one of the things James Gunn has said is that being like open on the internet and on social media allows him and allows people to come in contact with people they probably wouldn't normally. Like, our country is still pretty segregated, right? Like, I live in a suburb that does not have a lot of black people in it. And so I don't interact in my daily life with people of color very often. But I do on Twitter. I follow a lot of people of color on Twitter, and I get to see their opinions on things, and they open my mind up to perspectives and like experiences that I wouldn't have. So I think that's where social media can be such a great thing. But the flip side is it can be this hive of like gross disgustingness, and I don't know which outweighs the other, to be honest.
I mean, there's all of that, and I can't even really say anything intelligent about that. I'll just add there's the element of like being addicted to it and wanting to check it all the time. And what actually happened today was I tried to delete Twitter and Facebook, and then I realized that Apple had changed their interface for deleting apps, so I failed, and then I ran out of and then like the impulse to do that disappeared, and then I was like, well, I need to do something. So that was why I cleaned up my followers list. But I was really irritated and felt like I was trapped in social media world, and kind of sick of the whole thing actually.
The whole rat race. Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael, what do you think about all this? I mean, you're not on social media, so.
Yeah, I think you're all fools for being on the grid. They'll find you and they'll get you.
Yeah, I mean, like that. I mean, you say that, and it's semi-sarcastic, but they will. Like, I mean, there have been stories about, like, I think there was a story I heard about on another podcast that was talking about this week, that there was just a woman who got into an argument with someone else, just like in replies to someone bigger than them, like not a famous person, and the next thing she knew, someone was like emailing her boss with screenshots of things that she said online trying to destroy her life. And it's really like, I think that's the most danger of it. Like we said, like Twitter is this weird thing where like you're doing something in the moment. Like a lot of people live tweet shows they're watching, or like the Oscars or things like this, or sports that they're watching. So you're getting these snapshots that make sense in the context of that moment. But then you can just pull them out of that context and just drop them on a Word document all stacked up to make it build something that it isn't. I mean, obviously James Gunn is not a pedophile. Like, he was making jokes, but you pull these things out of the context of this was a man trying to push the envelope with inappropriate jokes and throw labels at it. And I think that's so dangerous. And it's just, I think we're just ramping up in the problem with this whole thing.
People aren't very generous to other people with these 140 character statements. They just assume whatever they want to assume based on what they think the person is.
Yeah,
so it's not really a great communication platform, I would say. I mean, you know, you kind of want like a long form, more thought out written thing to get a feel for someone, unless you're going to be really generous about it.
Yeah, and the other wrinkle in this is Twitter as a platform kind of completely uninterested in policing themselves of terrible people. Like the big news story this week is that all the other social media platforms have kicked Alex Jones off their platform for violating their terms of service, and Twitter is refusing to, claiming they haven't violated their terms of service and we won't do it. And there's all these talks about, you know, First Amendment rights, which don't really apply here. But I do see a social media platform company saying, okay, this is not a first, like, this isn't a freedom of speech issue, but like this thing is so broadly used, we don't want to be seen as a thing that is going to censor things.
Yeah, it's the same with all of them. I mean, like YouTube is basically a monopoly too. So yeah, I kind of see the point that if they're censoring things, it's you know, it's kind of, it's the only place.
Yeah, but should you, because it's the only place, should you be allowed to spread hatred via that platform?
I mean, that's a tricky one, because like YouTube banned Alex Jones, but they have like Al Qaeda indoctrination videos. So I'm kind of like, what is your standard exactly?
YouTube is having a tough time because they want to ban all of the Al Qaeda indoctrination videos. It's just that their AI filters aren't very good yet, and they're accidentally banning good things. And I think the Alex Jones things was deliberate, but
it was. But they banned Alex Jones because it wasn't even a violation of like it wasn't a hate speech violation of terms of service. It was, they temporarily banned him for one specific thing, and he made a new account to attempt to get around the ban. He had like a 30-day ban for saying something inappropriate or something, and he made another account to attempt to circumvent the ban, and they caught him, and that's an immediate, like, permanent ban. So it's kind of like Al Capone and his taxes, right? Like, they didn't get him for the bad thing that he's actually doing. They got him for another bad thing that they just happened to catch him on. And so, I mean, all these platforms have all these problems, and I don't know, like, I'm at the stage you're at, Matt, where I'm just like, I don't know. I'm just going to tweet, like, I'm going to share our stuff, and I'm going to do anything like Doof Media related on there, but I don't know if it's something I want to be involved in anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I had just today, I was like, witnessed one of these like 75 comment long argument Facebook threads, because we're talking about Twitter, and the thing is, Twitter is particularly toxic because of the character limit, but Facebook has this phenomenon where like no one will comment on anything unless it makes everyone mad. And then when it makes everyone mad, people become irrational and dumb. And so just the quality of discussion there is so poor, but that's like the main way people talk to each other now. And it's so like sad. Like I'm not exaggerating. That's like anyone I knew from high school, the only place that we really communicate is probably Facebook now. The only place where we know anything about each other is Facebook. And on Facebook, all you're going to see is that person yelling at someone about politics.
Right.
It's like, God, what a toxic, horrible thing to have introduced into the world.
Yeah,
Mark Zuckerberg.
And it's like, I completely agree with that. But I also have friends that I've made via Twitter that people I've become good friends with because we were talking on these social media platforms about movies and stuff that I've met at Fantastic Fest. So it's like, I see the good in it, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just like, it's exhausting, and it's all outrage, like circular arguments again and again and again. And it's just like people making themselves feel better by raging about things. And I participate in it. Like, I'm not even saying this is other people's problem. Like, I was doing it today. I was whining about something on Twitter today. But man, I don't know. Like, I see people get fired, and I see like 10-year-old things and coordinated efforts to destroy people. And I'm just like, what's the point anymore? Like, what's the point? And I don't know if like we came to a conclusion during this discussion, but man, I want to delete my Facebook.
Yeah, I'm like I don't have the power to change it, right? Like, I don't have the power to embark on like a campaign of shaming the kind of behavior that I don't like to see, because it's not going to do anything. It's just gonna it's going to be me doing it, and everyone will think I'm an asshole, and then that'll be it. So
I think the mindset to have is just to, even if it's a shame that you have to think about other people trying to frame you for what you say, just take responsibility and never say anything that is going to be taken out of context, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I am in general pretty careful about what I talk about.
Yeah.
And I've always been that. I've always been that way, but it feels like you have to be that way even more, especially like we're trying to build a brand here and we're trying to get more popular. So as we continue to grow, this is something we need to be really conscious about, for sure.
Yeah, I think we probably have the right attitude. I mean, the thing about Gunn is like he was basically trying to be a comedian. Right. And it's really hard for comedians because comedians have to be transgressive. They have to say shocking, unacceptable things, and not like they're intentionally crossing the line of what's okay to say de jure. And then as the years move on, that line actually moves around such that something that somebody said 10 years ago might have actually just been like a little bit edgy, and now it's completely unacceptable and terrible. Right. It's something they would have to apologize for. And it's like, yeah, I'm sorry, that's what comedians do. Like, do you just not want to have comedy anymore? Because that's the implication, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, there's no arguing that his jokes were designed to be offensive. That was the point of them. That's like that's what he was doing. And to pretend like they weren't is just being blatantly dishonest.
Well, and they were really bad, but I've seen more offensive jokes like in mainstream Hollywood movies.
Yeah.
So like, okay, right. So let's just fire everyone. It's a bit.
Well,
silly.
I mean, I think like that's the part of the argument I didn't really want to get into, because I think like everyone generally agrees that Disney doing this is stupid, especially since this already came up. He already apologized for it 6 years ago, and everyone just moved on, and now. Well, the goalposts have moved.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've actually found plenty of people online who are completely fine with it.
Yeah, that's yeah.
So
you're right. All right. So I think that's it for that mini segment. I think before we moved on, Michael, you had one quick thing you wanted to talk about, right? One news related item. It's a second mini segment, if you will.
Hold on. We got to do the segment transition.
Oh.
Doof. All right. For this next segment,
It's beautiful.
we're going to be talking about how the Oscars is going to introduce a new category this year.
Oh, really, Michael?
Yes, or at least I don't know if they've actually decided, but there's a lot.
They have.
They've officially decided
Yep.
that there's going to be a category in the achievement in popular film.
So, Michael, how do you feel about this new category?
I think it's stupid.
Why do you think it's stupid?
I think it's stupid because the Oscars are admitting that they're like don't care if people like the movies that they're nominating, and that they're going to have a whole nother category for movies that people like.
Yeah, it's almost like renaming the Best Picture category as Best Unpopular Movie.
Yeah. It's kind of offensive to the idea of the Oscars, to be honest.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I think this is ridiculous. I think it's such a cheap gimmick to get people to be like, oh, watch the Oscars. They like the movies you like. I don't think it's gonna. Is there anyone out there that's not watching the Oscars today that's gonna hear, oh, they have one award for a movie I've seen. I'll watch this 3-hour program now. I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, there's already an award for that, which is like the top box office list.
Right, and there's the
the
People's
reward
Choice
that you
Awards,
get,
and there's the MTV Movie Awards.
The reward that you get is a lot of money, which is why the films are made.
Right.
But also, it kind of speaks to the fact that, like, for me, I think the list of movies that make the best Oscars every year are growing, like, more and more specialized as best Oscar movies. Like, they're movies specifically made to try to be best Oscar movies. And like, if you look at the best film lists of the 90s and the early 2000s, then they're all like really famous movies that people have watched that are also good. But I feel like now that's less so the case. It's a lot more common that if you're not a film buff, you haven't seen any of them.
Well, I mean, I think that's more of the cause of people aren't going to the movies as much, and when they do go to the movies, they're going to see the big, huge blockbuster spectacle that usually does not win awards. But here's like, how are you defining popular, Academy? What does popular mean? Does popular mean $150 million? Like, are you defining it on box office receipts? Like how are we defining this?
Right, because if it's just the most popular film, then you don't need to vote on that. There's a quantitative metric.
Right, and like Shape of Water won Best Picture last year. That movie made almost $70 million domestically. It made over $200 million worldwide. Is that considered popular? Or would that not have been nominated for Best Picture if this new category? I mean, because that's what's going to happen.
I don't think it would have, but like for kind of undescribable reasons, because you kind of know what they're talking about when they say popular movies, but it's kind of insulting to like clump movies that, are pandering.
I mean, I think this may work actually, because like what this does is it gives them a mechanism by which they can put like Infinity War in the running for like a big, not quite Best Picture, but kind of similar to Best Picture. And then that ropes in a large number of, the maybe demographics that wouldn't normally watch the Academy Awards are going to be like, well, I care about this. I actually care about these, by definition, popular movies are movies that more people care about, and they might want to just go watch the show to see if their favorite movie wins.
I guess. I think this is just a way for the Academy to avoid putting like movies that they don't consider Oscar movies into the Best Picture category. This is a way to avoid putting genre films into Best Picture. It almost seems like it's a response to like The Shape of Water winning. Yeah,
maybe. I don't think they're ever. I think that they're very much against putting genre films into the Best Picture category. I mean, this is like, I think Get Out would go into popular movies. Like, everyone's talking about how Black Panther should be nominated for Best Picture next year because of how well it was received and the cultural significance of it. Nope, that's going to go in the popular movie category now. That explains this whole situation perfectly.
Yeah.
Because they can't, quote unquote, snub Black Panther, so they're going to just skirt around that entirely.
I mean, it sounds like it's going to be snubbed to be put in this category.
Right, and what happens is like they did this when they created the animation category. Basically, all that meant was animated films are never going to be nominated for Best Picture because now there's a Best Animated Film category. You segment your stuff and like push it out.
Well, because the last Lord of the Rings movie won Best Picture, and that would never happen if there was a popular movie category.
Yeah, absolutely. It just started really storming here. I don't know if you guys can hear that.
A little bit.
Yeah. Okay, and the other just thing, Michael. No, we're not ready for the segment. We're not ready for the segment change yet. The other thing they said is they're gonna take the whole show down to 3 hours, which I think is generally a good thing. But in order to do this, they're gonna cut some of the less popular,
the minor technical awards like writing.
Yeah, well, like this pisses me off so much because like sound design, special effects design, these are already kind of the unsung heroes of movie making. These are people that work really hard and have such a really big role in making a movie what it is. And now like the one time they get to stand on a stage in front of millions of people and are honored, now we're just going to be like, nope, we're going to do that during the commercial because we have to talk about the popular.
It's not a good
movie.
move because either either you just admit the Academy Awards is for film buffs and like include all of the smaller categories that are actually a lot more interesting to watch than the bigger ones. And that the only bit that most people watch is like the red carpet interviews and then they turn it off. Or you just turn it into, I don't know, a Marvel movie or something. So know where I'm going with that.
Yeah, I think the thing is, I think
they're going to make it so that no one is going to like watching it, I guess is my point.
I mean, that's kind of what it's kind of what it's going towards. But I think the one thing I've seen, and again, the problem with Twitter is your Twitter feed is basically shaped around who you follow. So I follow a lot of film people, and nobody's happy with this based on my Twitter feed. But again, I follow a very specific kind of person. So.
Doof.
All right, let's talk about the man who was a selection for our Patreon account. Let's talk about The Fifth Element.
Every 5,000 years.
Remove the shield.
When the three planets are in eclipse, the black hole like a door is open. Evil comes, spreading terror and chaos.
There's nothing that can stop this.
There is only one thing.
Perfect.
The Mondachiwan have in their possession the only weapon to defeat evil. 4 elements, gathered around a fifth.
This movie came out in 1990, as the website loads, 7. There we go. It was written and directed by Luc Besson, who before this did a whole bunch of movies, including his biggest one before this, which was Leon the Professional. Have you guys seen that movie?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So The Fifth Element is largely regarded as a cult classic these days. It was one of his more successful movies. I think it made $190 million off a $90 million budget. I actually think it made more than that. I think it tripled its budget, which is pretty good for Luc Besson, who often has some problems with his budget. Mm-hmm. This is a movie I've seen very, very, very many times. I've seen this movie so many times, probably like over a dozen. And I watched it twice in preparation for this podcast, and I'm really looking forward to talk about it. But so let's kind of let's go around the proverbial table and let's get an overview of what you thought of the Fifth Element. So, Michael, had you seen this movie before?
I had seen this movie before.
And what did you think about it on this rewatch, just generally? I know we're going to get into your copious amounts of notes.
You told me that in preparation for the new Doofcast, I was to take copious Michael notes.
Which means like super critical negative notes.
I didn't get that meaning, but that is what I did.
I was being sarcastic.
And I'm proud to say that I liked 3 things about this movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
3 whole
good.
things.
It's pretty good for Michael.
So you didn't like the movie, though? You don't feel the movie held up? Do you remember liking the movie before?
No, I never liked this movie.
Okay. Is there like a general reason before we get into specifics?
Just because it's bad.
Okay. All right, Matt, how about you? Had you seen this movie before?
Yeah, I saw this movie in theaters when it came out. I think it was a very kind of like important movie for little Matt, in terms of it's very visually striking in a way that was very, very fresh and exciting in 1997. And I love this movie for most of my life. I did rewatch this movie with Michael though, so unfortunately,
Oh no.
the field that he emanates affected me. But I didn't just come away from it saying that was terrible. I identified pretty much what I didn't like, and in pretty much every case, I had an idea of like what I would do to fix that specific thing, rather than just say like, oh, it's just dumb. So that's I hope that we get a chance to talk about some of these specific things in a little bit.
Yeah, I think we will. Yeah, I've always adored this movie, and ominously as lightning as thunder strikes, I probably like this is the first time I really looked at it with a very serious adult critical eye, and there were definitely, I think it's aged in some places not well. There's a lot of very 90s-ishness about some of this movie, but overall I really enjoyed it. Like you were saying, I think Luc Besson has like a very specific imagination, and like I love the set design and the costume design and the look and feel of everything. I like a
very
lot.
specific imagination that always revolves around female characters.
Yeah, nubile young female characters.
In particular, that
Yes.
he ends up marrying.
That he ends up marrying in real life later.
Yes, he is a very problematic human being for sure. But
Yeah, but you can see his naked psyche right there on the screen, which I guess could be viewed as a plus.
yeah, he's not exactly hiding it, is he?
Yeah.
All right, so let's dive into it then. Let's talk about this movie in some detail, and let's get into some of the things that you guys didn't like. So I guess the best thing to do is start at the beginning.
Let's start at the beginning.
Okay, so this movie opens with a pretty extended flashback sequence, something I kind of always forget exists before I sit down and watch this movie, and it's probably too long.
I would like to jump in here.
Okay.
And say that the intro was one of the three things I liked about this movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What did you particularly like about the intro?
Well, the first thing to point out is that although the movie later becomes a comical farce, the very beginning scene has kind of like creepy music and like a spaceship in the darkness, and it actually seems like it's going to be like a really dark movie. But then we jump down to Earth in Egypt, and there's all these great little like setting up shots that tell you who the characters are. There's like the boy who's holding the big reflective dish as a mirror, as a light source for the professor. There's the professor's young assistant who is being told to do things, but he's just like drawing a picture of a sailboat.
Yeah, Luke Perry in a big role.
Mm-hmm.
Not really.
Who's Luke Perry?
Who's
I don't
Luke
know.
Perry?
I thought that was Leonardo DiCaprio.
It was not Leonardo DiCaprio. Who's Luke Perry?
Anyway.
Beverly Hills 90210? What?
Was he the guy from Friends?
Oh my God. Let's move on.
Anyway, I thought it was cool. Like all the characters were set up real immediately. And then there's the tension with the monk guy who's trying to poison the professor, and the professor's like about to drink it, but then he doesn't, and all that stuff. And I thought it was good.
Yeah. I'm going to say this now because I'm not going to remember later, but the monk tries to poison. Okay, so the priest of the whatever order tries to poison the guy.
Uh-huh.
He tosses the water away and says, "You don't toast with water." Many hours of movie later, Gary Oldman pours himself a glass of water and delivers a lengthy speech to a priest of the same order, and then capping off the speech says, "Cheers," toasting the priest with water, then drinks the water and almost chokes to death and has to be saved by the priest.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Isn't it great how detailed and wonderful this movie is?
No one's ever noticed this before.
Nobody.
In the world.
I mean, you're absolutely right. That feels like a very intentional setup and payoff there.
Yeah, I agree that the intro sequence, it was a very effective scene. Like it's just well done from start to finish.
So I'm surprised you thought Michael, you think the intro scene made it seem like a different kind of movie? Because I think the intro was just as campy as the rest of the movie, which is one of the reasons I think this movie is wonderful, because I love the campy aspect of it.
Once you go down to Egypt, then yeah, you get that impression. But it's a good juxtaposition at that point from the very beginning shot and music and credits.
Yeah, which is like Alien. It's got like synth music, darkness, planet, spaceship. It feels like Alien, and then you go down to the surface and it's more lighthearted.
Well, I think it's a very musical film in general. Like there's a lot of score to it. Like there's very few moments in this movie where score music isn't playing, and it's usually that kind of melodramatic, operatic music a little bit is throughout the movie, even in the campy parts.
Yeah.
All right, so let's flash forward and let's meet our main character.
Well, hold on, Scott. You've missed a scene.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So the next thing that happens is we see the military in space in the future, and they're approaching the black ball of evil. And they're going to try to destroy it, and they're talking to the president, who is the worst actor.
Yeah.
I mean, he's campy.
He's the worst actor. But there's some good things about this scene. Like the military, I think they've been told to act really soulless on purpose.
Yes. I mean, you look at the way the way all the military shots are constructed are very the way he frames the characters, and it's like this kind of sometimes the camera's uncomfortably close to their face, and sometimes they're just look weird and uncomfortable, all of them.
Right. And but then there's a lot of weird things about the scene too. Like the priest is there with the president, and he's been sitting there the whole time for some reason. He's there in the president room, and then 20 seconds, I think it's literally 20 seconds, because the president's you have 20 seconds when he stands up to speak. He's like, you can't kill this because it is a great evil, or something like that, which is way too late. And it's why is he there to begin with?
Okay, that
doesn't make sense.
That's pretty pedantic. Who cares? He's there because he's seeking an audience with the president.
I mean, so this is the kind of thing where I formed a theory, which was that and there's a lot of stuff later was why I formed a theory. This is just like the first example that we've reached in discussing the story, that there was a previous version of this script that was longer and had more explanation of things and more setup, and potentially set up the evil black thing as more of a well explained threat, and more thoroughly explained the stakes, because as it is, the movie doesn't spend a lot of time explaining the stakes, and you don't really understand what the black thing is, how it works, why it's doing anything, why it's talking to Zorg, why Zorg is talking to him, what the priest order came from, where the weapon came from. Nothing's explained. And so my theory is that they realized that was going to be long and boring, so they chopped it all out and then mashed as much of that exposition as they could into other places in ways that almost always feel strained.
Right, but really they messed that up too, because the best thing to do would be not to show it or explain it at all. And they ruin that immediately in this scene, because they actually show the thing, and it just looks kind of like not a black hole, because it's not completely black, but kind of like a little hole in space or something. And then a skull literally comes out of it, and it's not scary at all, and it's it would have been better just not to show it, because before they'd set they had a bunch of people looking at it, with the camera showing that person's face, and it's like, well, just don't show it. You've already set it up fine so that you don't have to show it, and then they just show it, and then you're not really scared.
Yeah, I mean, like so much of this is just like I don't care where the evil comes from or where the priest comes. Like I don't think that's important to what the story is trying to do at all.
But it's important to setting the tone.
I don't think so. I don't think that the tone is campy.
I think you need to like show that this is like the ultimate evil that people are trying to prevent, and not just like make a farce of it right away.
I mean, that's like, how is it not clear that this is the ultimate evil that they're trying to prevent?
Because it's got a skull.
Who cares? Like, yeah, it's the 90s, man. Skulls were edgy. Like, what? I don't think like it having a skull when it completely devours
saying,
a ship.
If this was Ridley Scott, he wouldn't have shown the big bad thing.
I don't know about that.
I think there was a giant skull mountain in Prometheus, but
I think there was a ton of skulls in all of Ridley Scott's movies.
I think maybe we'll find I would like to just move on, and maybe we'll find another example of a time where I can be like, look, like the way this exposition is used is not great.
Okay.
Yeah. So the next scene is Bruce Willis waking up in his apartment, which is the second thing I liked about this movie.
His apartment is the best part of this movie by far. Everything about his apartment is wonderful.
That's all. That's what people talked about when this movie came out. That's what I recall. Everyone all the other amazing visuals. Everyone wanted to talk about this 4x12 apartment.
Well, and I think it's because this is one of the only places in the movie where Besson wasn't like hamstrung by the limits of special effects at the time. So he since it's such a small space, he could really just go crazy with designing what an apartment in 20 whatever New York would look like. And so it takes full advantage of that. And I love each and every bit of detail. I love he has his trying to quit cigarette dispenser, and I love the detail of the cigarettes where like 3/4 of the cigarette is filter.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that until this viewing because I didn't know how cigarettes worked when I was a kid.
Yeah, but it's like it's a nice little touch that they never really reference, but it's wonderful.
And I like that the last match is important at the end of the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
They set up that very early in the film. Yeah, and I think Corbin Dallas is a great character. I think, and the movie, like we were talking about, the way other men are shot in this movie is like to specifically demasculinate them to make Corbin Dallas seem like the manliest man that's ever manned. And I think that's very, very intentional. Like, think of every other man in this movie.
It's definitely intentional.
Yeah.
And it's also annoying.
Well, and it's fairly, he's trying to do something very complex there that I'm not even sure if I fully get. And I don't want to jump ahead, but like I assume we're going to talk about Ruby Rod, Chris Tucker. We're gonna talk about Chris Tucker. But like, what's interesting is that the female characters in the movie couldn't care less about Bruce Willis.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is funny.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like, I think you were talking about how the movie doesn't explain a lot. One of the things I love so much is how kind of you're just thrust into this world, and we meet Bruce Willis, and the movie doesn't ever like really lay out his backstory. Like, we get very limited. Like, he definitely used to be in the military. I think he probably drove something in the army. He's retired now. He's divorced, and he's driving a cab, and that's like really all you get. And I like that. I like that we're just kind of thrust into this, and we're not clear how it all works. And they're talking about points on the license, and I just like all that detail.
Well, one of the things that I was kind of critical of here, one of the few things I was critical of, is that he gets a phone call, which is kind of like explaining some things. But I was so distracted by all the glorious things going on in the apartment that I missed the whole phone call.
Oh, well, that's your fault.
I'm just saying they should have known what the audience is going to be drawn to, which is the bed that like shrink wraps the sheets and then brings out a new pair of sheets.
And the fridge that goes down.
That was all very pleasing.
Yeah, it was really great.
Okay, but then when he leaves the apartment, he gets held up by a weird guy.
Yeah. So what? Did you not like that?
I'm just reading my notes of what happened.
Okay.
But no, I guess I mean, I don't want to just say I didn't like it, but I was a bit confused as to the point or what was being communicated in that scene.
I think they were establishing that Bruce Willis is a badass. Like he
Yeah.
opens his
I
front
believe
door.
that's what I said.
That's what we kind of decided to at the time, which seems to be like a pattern in Luc Besson's movies. Is there's just like one guy who's a badass, and then there's some like innocentish hot girl.
Yep. That's very
So,
true.
All right. Well, I guess all the characters have been set up at this point.
Yeah. Well, not all of them. So,
Well, almost.
let's speed along. I think we're spending too much time on the beginning.
But I've got more notes.
Okay. Well, you don't have to read them line by line.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we have the great evil is returning after 5,000 years, and it's time to bring all the elements back to Earth. To use the weapon, and as Matt hinted at the very beginning of this show, the ship that is carrying all of them is destroyed, and it's very sad because the nice round aliens all get blown up. I liked those round aliens.
Are they nice? Did they kill that old guy in the beginning? We're not clear.
I don't think that. I kind of felt like, to me, I felt like they just knocked him out, and it was just a giant misunderstanding. But
the priest was clearly trying to kill him, so the agreement was clearly that anyone who found out about it should die.
yeah, well, does that mean Luke Perry died too?
Probably.
Yeah,
Oh
I think
God.
he did.
They probably killed all the kids too, just to be sure.
Oh my God, this is terrible.
Yeah.
They're the bad guys.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what the whole lesson of the movie is, that why save life when we see what we do with it, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. You're right.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
So we have our scene where the fifth element herself is reborn from her glove,
Which was very like groan-inducing and anime-y in all the ways you hate, in my opinion.
How do you mean?
I mean, the fifth element is a naked girl that all of the scientists immediately comment on, like, "Oh, she's perfect."
Yeah, I mean that
And
was
make a bunch of like
a
sexual
little-
jokes.
it's a little uncomfortable. But Mila Jovovich is a very attractive woman, so like I get it. I get
Yeah,
it.
but like, yeah. I mean, it's a movie, right? But like, if that happened in a professional pseudo-military setting, I don't think people would be behaving that way. No. I mean, you can take the conceit. The conceit is that she's supposed to be the most beautiful woman you've ever seen, because that's the conceit.
Right.
So maybe we can I'll give the movie some slack there.
It's basically like when they meet Galadriel in Lord of the Rings, except she's naked, so it makes it a little creepier.
Yeah, and only seconds old.
Yeah. Well, but she's got genetic memory, man. They say that she's got all this memory stored in her genes. She knows everything.
Like, and I know this is like you said, this is like a campy movie, and it's not really meant for this kind of thinking. But it has always bothered me a little bit that she was like a statue for thousands of years or something, but there's been a person in the statue this whole time, because you see some bones sticking out of the statue, but also, is she a statue? Because the briefcase handle is actually in the statue's hand. That's a detail that I only noticed on this viewing. So the statue is holding the briefcase. So wait, what?
This is just when I say you're overthinking this, Matt.
But what?
There's a lot of stuff like this.
But what are you even supposed to be thinking? Like was she a statue or not? Was she in a statue?
Yes, her body was sleeping in the statue. That's what you're supposed to be thinking. Like, she goes dormant and waits for the evil to return.
Okay. Why was the briefcase handle in the statue's hand?
I have no idea.
Okay.
What briefcase are you talking about?
With the element stones?
Yeah, the handle, one of the two handles of the element stone briefcase is ripped off. That handle is being held by the removed statue hand.
Perhaps at one point she was carrying the stones with her for transport, and then.
But it wasn't in her hands when they recovered the statue from the Egypt pyramid.
Yeah, it was 300 years have gone by. Maybe they put it with her in the intervening time. These are like really stupid, picky things.
I disagree. These types of details are important when constructing a movie.
No, they're not. They're not at all.
Okay, well, here's a more general statement about Lilu and my complaints with Lilu is that she's not a character. She's just a vulnerable and perfect female mostly for Bruce Willis to fall in love with. She's not a character.
I mean, what does she need that would make her more of a character for you?
Like personality and like motivations other than what Bruce Willis wants her to do.
I think she
And-
most often does not do what Bruce Willis wants her to do. I think it's Bruce Willis like trying to keep up with her for the most of the movie.
Well, but it's just like tasks that she's doing, I guess. There's no like personal motivations or wants or anything.
I feel like I feel like she's more of a character than Michael does, but also I think the fact that she doesn't speak English for 90% of the movie is an impediment toward you understanding like what she's thinking and doing, and thus makes it harder to connect to her. Which I don't even hold that against the movie. I think it's just kind of the nature of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think she's not like the most complex character in the world, but I think like I think she starts off just as this exactly what you're supposed to see her as, Michael, and then through the course of the movie, we learn that, you know, as much as we see her as this perfect thing that's just going to do the mission, she is actually also underneath it just like a scared human being that doesn't really understand what's going on and what to do and what she's supposed to do and why she's supposed to do it. And part of her relationship with Bruce Willis throughout the movie, which I'll admit is not like the best drawn thing in the world, but part of that relationship is learning what it means to be alive and what it means to be human.
I think she was meant to be seen as more of an object.
I think at the beginning I agree with that, but I think the point of the movie is that she's not.
I think she kind of has an arc though, because she does, like Scott said, she goes from being a soldier basically who's just like, yep, this is why I'm here, and then she encounters tremendous doubt and despair and has to be, you know, you can choose to like the way it ends up or not, but she definitely kind of she undergoes growth and change throughout the movie. I definitely, I mean, she definitely is used like 17 different times as eye candy, I mean, in a way that is like 90s and just, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of actually like already bored of criticizing that, because it's like that's just the way the movie is, and that's the way Luc Besson is. So
Yeah.
can't really do anything with that criticism.
Well,
Okay,
the next thing that appears, well, okay, I do have to make a comment on my joke at the beginning, which was she falls into Bruce Willis's cab, and then Bruce Willis makes the joke, "I only speak two languages, lady, English and bad English."
Okay. Is it what, I mean, it's not a great joke, but
It's not. It doesn't make sense at all. It's not a joke. This is like the kind of humor that is throughout this whole movie, is like things that are said as if they're jokes, but it doesn't.
that's what
They're not
camp. That's what
jokes.
camp is. I don't understand. Do you not understand what campy movies
I don't think
are?
I do understand what camp is actually.
This movie is camp. That's what it's silly. It's like goofy, and it's like silly for sometimes where it's trying to be funny and sometimes where it's trying to be serious. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely reminds me of a lot of other 90s like jokes, like, you know, I don't know, for some reason Blade jumps into my head,
Yeah.
where he's like giving one-liners that are not actually jokes but still classic. Yeah, like that's one thing I noticed is like the humor is just weird.
It's very weird. It's very, yeah, I mean, like, that's all of Ruby Rod, right? Like, it's just strange and really, really out there and pushing the envelope in a different kind of way.
Yeah, I admit that I kind of want to do like a PhD dissertation on Ruby Rod to try to understand what is being done with this character.
Yeah, well, I think we'll get there really quick, because so the next thing that happens is basically they learn that the Stones were not on the ship. They were not with her. They were with Plava Laguna, I think is her name. I don't know if I said that right. The opera singer that's on Flost in Paradise. So they have their mission now to go there and retrieve the stones from them. And I like this setup a lot, because like you have this almost Comedy of Errors-esque thing where the government rigs a contest so Corbin Dallas wins it, so he'll take the mission. But like everyone hears about this, so they're all trying to get his seat. And I really like that entire scene at the airport where people just keep walking up to the ticket booth saying that they're Corbin Dallas.
I was really confused by that whole thing though, because if this is like a secret mission, like why are they announcing it on the radio? Like why couldn't they just have given him a ticket to go to the place?
How do you if all the tickets are full, how do you get a ticket?
Well, they got those tickets, so
No, they just rigged the contest.
But
He's got you there, Michael.
I guess
If the plane is full and there are
Okay.
no tickets to be had except for the 2 tickets that were set aside for the contest, and the
And-
only way to get him onto the plane is by rigging the contest.
couldn't they have just bought someone else's tickets?
But
No.
no.
Oh,
I also enjoyed the scene in the airport with the like that is where this movie shines to me is the scenes where there's like comedy of errors is the perfect description,
Yeah.
where you've got like two different parties at cross purposes, but they're sort of like fumblingly and accidentally interacting in ways that are both comical but also like kind of it reminded me of like Guy Ritchie at his best, actually.
Oh,
where
that's a
there-
good point. Yeah.
Where there's multiple things going on, and it's actually because things don't work out the way you expect them to, but they still work out in a clever, different way that makes it amusing. That happened. Like the beginning of this movie reminds me of that. This part of the movie reminds me of that. Certain elements of like the action sequences later also do. Pretty much any time an element is like subtly placed, like the match, and then comes into play later, which happens a bunch in the movie. Those are my favorite parts of this movie, and these are like the things that kind of redeem it in my eyes, actually.
yeah. I felt more like it was more of like a series of coincidences that weren't as set up as like a Guy Ritchie movie, where you've got these kind of independent plot lines that weave together in a masterful way. Whereas to me, it just seemed like people were showing up places and convenient things were happening. Like, oh, now the one alien people have the hostage, and what are they going to do? And then Bruce Willis is like, oh, you just got to kill the leader, and he just goes around the corner and shoots the leader, and then the scene's over. And then it's just like stuff like that isn't set up at all, but it's just characters meeting each other and then it being solved sort of coincidentally. That made it not as pleasing to me as like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. But
Well,
I think I get what you're saying. It just didn't it wasn't set up enough for me.
Okay. I mean, I think I don't know how else the movie could set up the airport scene. Like, I think we show each and every group of people think that they've taken Corbin Dallas out of the game, but we know that they've actually failed to. So we know that they're all going to the airport with the intent of pretending to be Corbin Dallas.
But none of them think they've taken him out of the game. They're just all pretending to be him.
No, they do. The Zorg has the police arrest him. They think they've arrested him, but they arrested the wrong person. And then the alien guys think they kill the cops that have the arrested Corbin Dallas. So they take him and they use his face to transform into who they think is Corbin Dallas. And then the priest thinks he's knocked him out and locked him in his apartment. So everyone thinks that Corbin's off the board, and they all show up at the airport not knowing that not only do each other all think that Corbin's off the board, but he's actually not off the board.
Oh, I get it now.
I think that's my favorite part of the movie is the airport scene, just because it's like that mixture of all that stuff. And I also, again, I like the detail. I like the detail of the parasites in the landing gear, and we get to see this like very clearly like nuclear powered like thing sitting right next to this guy. Like they're just so like, I love the casual nature at with he pulls out this giant like rod that's probably like leaking radiation like crazy. I don't know. I just love the detail of that. I am a little confused about the sleeping pods though on the airplane, because like they said it was like a 4-hour trip. So I don't know why they would need sleeping. I don't know. That's getting into your level of nitpicking.
See, I just figured that if there was such a thing as a sleeping pod, then I would immediately turn it on when I got on an airplane.
Yeah, but like remember when Corbin's like, no, I don't want to go to sleep, and they press the button and he immediately passes out. Like that's
Maybe
like,
it's
hey, I don't want to fall asleep right now.
I don't know. Maybe they in the future flight attendants are told to just put everyone to sleep because they don't want trouble.
Hypersexualized flight attendants.
Yeah, super. Yeah, that was its own whole thing there. I hope we're not going to skip over talking about Gary Oldman's character too, because he's, I think, my favorite thing about.
Oh yeah,
the
we
movie.
got to talk about Zorg, and one of the things I want to talk about with Zorg is how Luc Besson and his direction uses circles in this movie. We already know that the Mr. Shadow evil thing is just a giant circle, but like there's a circle behind Zorg in every single one of the scenes he's in, and that's really really cool to show. Like, I mean, there's circles throughout the movie, like everywhere, but really with the Zorg character above all else. So let's talk about Zorg a little bit.
What does the circle mean?
I guess it's the evil thing looming behind him.
Yeah, it's representative of the evil. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those performances where you have to be reminded that it's Gary Oldman, but perfect. And also like, it's a great mix of actually being kind of a menacing and formidable character who does a lot of things that kind of cement him in your mind as being not to be trifled with, while also having my favorite like comic beats of the movie, like where he repeatedly thinks that he has the stones and doesn't.
Yeah.
Which I like. This movie may miss the mark with tone here and there, but like everything with Zorg, and I think it's because of Gary Oldman. For me, works great actually.
I agree. And Luc Besson loves Gary Oldman. He was the bad guy in The Professional, right?
Yeah.
And so he I think he called him one of the 5 greatest actors on the planet. So he really wanted him for here. And I agree. I think he's the performance in this movie. He's so great. And it's the right level of humor. It's the right level of camp. But yeah, you're right. It has the menace behind it. Like, I think it takes a lot to be able to have a character who in one scene can be choking to death on a cherry in this kind of hilarious comedic beat where Ian Holmes, priest, is holding this over him, and then also feel menacing when the movie wants him to feel menacing. I think that's great, and I think it's a little cool detail that he and the protagonist never are in the same room at the same time throughout the entire movie.
Yeah,
they never meet each
I like
other.
That. And speaking of lock stock things, like the way he dies feels very like poetic, and like the guys who he screwed over earlier kill him in a way that is very perfect thematic and just pulled off beautifully on in the film.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like anything else that happens to him in this movie. It's like right when he thinks he's got the upper hand on things, he learns that he doesn't, and it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about Ruby Rod. Since we're in Ruby Rod territory now. I think, like, whether or not you like this movie, for the most people, hinges on whether you like or can tolerate this character. I think, like, this movie was kind of critically divisive, and I think most of the differences in opinion on this movie center around Chris Tucker's character. So
Ruby Rod is the original Jar Jar Binks.
Interesting.
So we
Okay.
know where Michael stands.
Yeah. Matt, what do you think about? You said you wanted to do a dissertation on him. So what do you think about Ruby Rod?
Well, like I mean, even when I would, like, first of all, when you're 12 and watching this movie, which is when I first saw it, you just don't have any idea what the hell to make of this. Like, you have no frame of reference for this. As an adult, I'm like, okay, so the idea here is that Ruby Rod presents using very feminine clothing, voice, etc., but is apparently like the biggest sex god in the world.
Yeah.
He can have any woman he wants, and this is demonstrated in the film actually.
Multiple times. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess and we're commenting on masculinity and tastes and fashion and what people find attractive, and this is in a movie that has one character who's supposed to be the perfect woman and Bruce Willis, who's supposed to be kind of, you could say, a hunky action star, but nobody really cares about him, and he's actually kind of schlubby in the movie. So that all, I don't know where exactly to draw the line on that series of statements. Like, I think Ruby Rod is an interesting deconstruction of masculinity and attractiveness, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, especially in 97, this idea of this, not traditionally gendered character is a really interesting one. I think where the problem stems is his role in the film is kind of relegated to like sniveling, whining wimp. And it's like, I think it's funny. And I don't mind Ruby Rod at all. I think he's funny where he needs to be funny. It doesn't bother me. But I think if you're going to be exploring a character that like transcends gender normative stereotypes, but then you relegate him to either comedic relief or wimpy side character who doesn't really accomplish anything, then it kind of damages what it's trying to say. Or maybe that is exactly what he's trying to say, in which case we can have to have a conversation, Luc Besson. But I think that's my problem with him.
Yeah, well, there's also the like no one will defend Chris Tucker's voice as not being intrinsically annoying. So that's just there as an element that he has this voice that's super, and he's playing it up to make it even more annoying. So
sure.
But even if the character were less objectionable in other ways, he'd still have the voice.
Yeah, but I there's something so otherworldly about his character that I love so much. It feels like it's one of the distinctive parts of this world that Besson has created, right? That he doesn't feel like something that comes from what 1997 was.
Yeah, I think that's like, as science fiction, that's what I appreciate about this movie is it's got stuff like Zorg and Ruby Red, where like you never learn why Zorg's leg is that way,
or why he's got that thing on his head,
and you never learn why Ruby Rod is the way he is, and that's actually great because it makes it actually science fiction and not just like a I don't know, just kind of an adventure.
Mm-hmm. Well, my definition of science fiction would be like things that are explainable, though. I think these are more elements of like a fantasy world.
I think there's a difference between hard science fiction
because they're more stylistic than future things that are a perturbation to the story.
Perhaps I just mean original, like because there's so many. I mean, that's one. I mean, one thing you can't take away from the movie is that it's original in its visuals. Like,
sure.
Where movies have, I can't really qualify this with examples off the top of my head, but I know that this movie influenced the visual style for science fiction movies coming after it, and obviously it was influenced by things coming before it too. But it throws in these really wildly evocative things that you just had never seen before, and that's I appreciate things that I haven't seen before. Just as a fundamental thing. A fundamental feature to be appreciated.
We haven't talked about it a lot. I really love the creature design in this movie. I really like how Plava Laguna, the opera singer, I like her design. I like I can't remember what the name of the main bad guy aliens are, but I like their design a lot too. I like that it's practical.
I like the round donut aliens. I think I wrote down in my notes like the creatures look between good and fine, depending on which creature you're talking about. The spaceships and everything, like every exterior shot, looks great for 1997. Actually, anytime you see a view screen or a computer screen in the movie, it looks like dog shit because they're using like actual computers from the day to represent.
That's true.
And also they seem to be making it low tech on purpose because it's all like wireframe and terrible. I just thought that was interesting that some of the effects look great, and then I think they're like intentionally having effects that look terrible sometimes. Maybe not intentionally. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, Michael. Anything before we move on?
Nope.
All right, so they're on the ship and we do our awesome opera scene, which is another one of my favorite scenes in this movie. I think the opera scene is really cool, and I also really appreciate when it moves into Lilu's one action scene she gets in this movie, and how it cuts between the opera and that. And I know, like, do you think the music in that scene is diegetic or non-diegetic? Like, does the opera shift to a different kind of music, or is she just still doing opera and the background music is just for our benefit? I have no idea. I'm just wondering.
I thought that the background music was part of the scene.
Okay.
But the movie is breaking such abstractions at this point, I think. It doesn't matter. It's a Jungian dreamscape at this point. I mean, yeah, like, because I can nitpick about the kung fu fight and point out that, like, she like knocks giant aliens down with a literal flick of her wrist, but that kind of does bother me now as an old, boring, cynical person. But that's like the wrong level on which to approach, I think, that scene, because it is supposed to be this operatic, like, painting of events using the song, using the intercutting to emphasize things.
Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely, like, watching it this time, I was like, man, I definitely noticed the fact that that like no one in the scene knows anything about combat, but at the same time, I'm like, yeah, that's not the level on which you're supposed to be watching this.
Well, and I like how much it's juxtaposed with the scene where Zorg comes in, because she, like, kicks all these aliens' ass, and she, like, this is her badass kind of hero moment, and then she's, like, immediately made defenseless by Zorg and his gun, and
Yeah.
we kind of perfectly transition from this badass weapon to, oh no, she's still just a human being. As badass as she is, she's still just a human, and now she's in danger and suffering, and it was never really clear to me, because it's a PG-13 movie, like, just how injured she was, because it seems like he just opens fire on the vent and she's, like, all shot up, but, like, we don't actually see that much blood.
Yeah, I mean, based on what she gets patched up later for, like, a wound in her shoulder, which kind of makes you think she got shot maybe in the shoulder. But yeah, it's very unclear.
I think mostly she was just dying of sadness.
Yeah, it was a broken heart.
She was scared. Like, she's just, like Matt said, she's, like, 2 days old, and now this guy's, like, shooting her up, and she's, like, supposed to be this badass weapon that knows everything, and it has realized how innocent she is, and then, like, it's a human being that's killing her, the very thing she's there to save. It's gotta be really freaking confusing.
Yes, that's true. It did make me wonder why the alien guys didn't seem to use guns on her, and they just kind of lined up to get their asses kicked. But that's fairly typical action movie fare, so
Yeah.
didn't make too much of a deal out of it.
And we're fully in an action movie now, because we basically, like, we Bruce Willis die hard it pretty hardcore for the next couple minutes of the movie.
Yeah, like one thing about, just taking literally this idea that we're jumping between types of movie very sharply. Like, there's a scene earlier where Bruce Willis closes his military boss and two other people in a freezer, and then opens it again, and they all appear to be deceased. And he casually makes a wisecrack and snatches the plastic from them, and then closes them back in, ensuring that they're dead. Which is obviously like that's like it's just a comedy beat, because you
Yeah.
see the guy later anyway.
Yeah, when I was a kid, though, I thought they were dead.
Yeah, but that's what's kind of unique and weird about the movie, and I'm not sure if I like it actually, because it's confusing and it takes you out of the movie. But it is actually like very discreetly shifting gears between ridiculous comedy that you're not supposed to take seriously, and then action movie, and then melodrama, and yeah, like it does. I think it's a technique that I wouldn't use personally, because it takes you out of the movie.
Yeah, but I don't. I mean, it's like Bassan is kind of weird with his movies like this, because he loves to negotiate those tones, and I think they don't work more often than they work. And I think the reason they work so well in this movie in particular is because of the strength of the actors involved. Like we were talking about Gary Oldman. I mean, Bruce Willis is great too. This is when he still gave a shit, and he was actually like they wanted him in this movie, but it was going to cost too much money, so they told him we're going to go a different way. And Bruce Willis said, "Well, let me read the script." And he read the script and was like, "Okay, we can negotiate." Like he took a lower salary because he liked the script so much. So like, this is Bruce Willis trying, and I think it works really well because I actually like in preparation for this I wanted to get into this a little bit. I rewatched Valerian, Luc Besson's latest movie again, and my goal, my lens that I wanted to watch that movie through is why I think Fifth Element works and Valerian just doesn't. And the thing that I distilled it down to was the main characters, was Bruce Willis versus Dane DeHaan, who I was gonna say is a good actor except in this, but then I thought for a minute and realized I only like him in one thing, and the movie Chronicle. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that.
Yeah, we like Chronicle.
Yeah, but are you speaking for Michael now?
Speaking for Michael.
But
yes.
I don't think the reason I like Chronicle is because of Dane DeHaan. So I don't know. He might just not be a very good actor, and even if he is a good actor, he's completely wrong for the character in that part. And so all of the weird tone shifting melodrama to comedy to action thing in Valerian just doesn't work at all. So I think
and the hyper CG-ness of it makes it feel really inhuman, whereas the kind of bad puppety special effects of this actually kind of do it a favor.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But yeah, I mean the cast of this movie is stacked. We haven't really talked much about Ian Holm, who weirdly vacillates between being great as usual and then being just terrible where he's being campy. But like in my notes I wrote down actually all of the stars in the movie are great. Everyone else is absolutely terrible. And I think I can kind of stand by that because it seems like everyone who has a speaking role that isn't like the top 4 or 5 billed actors is like an extra they just pulled in off the street.
I don't think you're wrong. I mean, like you guys, Michael talked about the president. He's a wrestler. Tiny Lister is his name. The person who played Plava Laguna was Luc Besson's wife until he met Mila Jovovich, and then left her during filming. Left her for Mila Jovovich.
Yeah, that scene takes on a whole different meaning.
Yeah, he literally shot his wife in the stomach and killed her so he could get to be with the perfect being. That's really great, Luc Besson. But yeah, I mean, there's a couple guys that I don't mind. I don't know who did the voice of his mom, but I thought she was funny.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah, no, there's a few. I agree. There's a few side characters who are fine.
But I do think Zorg's henchman, the one that he blows up at the airport, is not a very well performed character. I mean, I'll cop to that a lot of the smaller roles in this are not great.
Yeah. It's. I mean, if anything, it's the massive like shift between the incredibly good actors and then just like 7 rungs below them, everyone else.
Yeah.
That's what kind of makes it pop out.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So we're heading towards the end of the movie now, which is good because we're running late as usual, guys.
Okay.
So they get the stones. The Gary Oldman blows up, and Mila Jovovich looks up what war is and gets really sad because human beings are awful. And then we get to the pyramid, and I actually think the stone opening scene is really well done. I think there's a lot of great tension there.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's one of the parts of the movie I like.
That's the third thing I like.
Oh, good. So, Michael, you want to talk about that a little bit since you like it?
Well, it's like a simple but satisfying Dungeons and Dragons or Legend of Zelda puzzle, where you have to activate the 4 elements with the 4 elements, and they discover it in a dramatically pleasing way, where the stupid character like sighs in frustration and it activates the wind one.
Yeah, I actually really like that. they're like, okay, what did you do? Redo everything you did. So he has to
Yeah.
he talks to the stone and says, we're not going to make it. And I just love how that shot. I love how like he performs that too, where it's like, maybe if I tell the stone we're not going to make it, it'll open up.
Yes, and that was good tension because you're like, just breathe on it again, dummy.
Yeah.
And then eventually does. And then I like that they activated the water one with Bilbo Baggins' sweat. And then that, of course, that the match, she had the single match left that was set up, was the fire one that they needed to activate.
Yeah.
So that was a pleasing scene.
Yeah. But then the moment of truth in the movie where she's it's the power of love, guys. It's the power of love that
Power of love.
activates the weapon.
Yeah.
Oh, shut up.
Well, yeah. That's one of my other comments was like Corbin should have been established as someone who had trouble with loving people, because he actually seemed to be like a tender-hearted person who,
I mean, he
could
was in
just
love
love
with her
anyone.
from like the second he saw her. Like,
right.
That's
So what? Yeah, I'm specifically saying, why did he have trouble saying he loved her at the end when everyone's like, when he seems like the most romantic guy in the world? It's like that was the only like little tiny beat of drama in that whole unfolding that I was like, this is fake. This is not earned. But anyway.
Yeah, I think I felt that way a little bit too. I felt like the love story was not as earned as the rest of it. I do like that. I like that it's structured to where like the moment of crisis for the resolution of the love story is also the moment of crisis for the resolution of the whole plot. I think that comes together nicely. But I agree that like I wish the movie had spent a little bit more time on their relationship, because their relationship is basically like she drops into his cab, he falls in love with her, then he kisses her while she's unconscious, and she rightly puts a gun to his head for it. And he is, to his credit, like immediately apologetic and says, I shouldn't have done that. That was a mistake. Like, that's good. Recognize that you definitely shouldn't have done that. But then, like, I think that the mistake of the entire Flossed in Paradise section was that it separates them the whole time. I think that was the mistake of it. You could have spent a lot more time on their budding relationship if you have them stay together in that. But the second they get to Flossed in Paradise, they're separated and they don't meet up again until he finds her in the vent. And that's a big chunk of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, she has no reason to be in love with him at all.
Right.
And he has no reason beyond she's hot and was like
She's
helpless.
perfect.
And he had to take care of her, which I suppose makes you have feelings. But yeah, I'd call that a weakness of the story.
I agree with that. Yeah. All right. So that's the movie. Do you want to talk about Luc Besson a little bit? Do you have anything more you want to say about this very problematic man?
I mean, I think he's done the same thing several more times, where he basically divorces his wife and then marries the star of his next movie.
Who else did he marry? I'm trying to remember.
You'll have to look at his Wikipedia. And no one like really well known, but just actors in like his French movies and stuff.
Okay.
He's been married 4 times.
It's also like a really, it's a common theme for his movies. Like reading about some of his French movies and stuff, and it's just like guy meets hot girl, in one case like literal hot angel who comes and like kicks people's asses for him, and then they fall in love in a similar sort of unjustified way.
Yeah. His career is really interesting to me though, because I think he makes these movies I don't think he loses money, like, cause he finds a way to finance his movies in a way that even if they don't earn, like Valerian lost money, but Luc Besson and his production company did not lose money. But then he'll make a movie like Lucy, which made a crap ton of money. So I think he every once in a while he has to make like a successful movie, and then he'll use that to finance his weirder projects like Valerian.
Interesting. Yeah, so I forgot that he was Lucy, and now I'm gonna have to go back and think about that movie a little bit.
Yeah, he also wrote Taken, which will not surprise you because there's a vulnerable woman that needs to be saved by a man.
But it is mostly just about the man being a badass and not so much about the woman. So that's
is
refreshing.
Those are his 2 motifs, though: is badass man and vulnerable hot woman.
That's very, very true. Yeah. But also, like, she's a badass woman.
Yeah.
So
Combines it a little bit there, but I mean, it's still it's the same. There's always elements of that in the woman too, right? Like Mila Jovovich is in some sense a badass woman.
Yeah. Well, they have to be badass and vulnerable at the same time.
And also hot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is definitely a man's image of what they want a woman to be. Like a seeming contradiction of being both badass and vulnerable at the same time. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so that is The Fifth Element. I enjoyed talking to you guys about that. I think I still like the movie more than both of you, but I think you both had good points.
Well, I think what happened with me was I went into it thinking like, I've always loved this movie. I've loved this movie since I was a kid, and I just hadn't seen it in a while, and there were a lot of things I noticed with adult eyes that rubbed me the wrong way, and it left me with a taste of betrayal. But like I think that's literally just the shock of noticing these things for the first time. I don't know if I want to watch it again this soon, but it's almost a different movie to me now than it was in my brain before I rewatched it.
Yeah, that's fair. I noticed how like gratuitously sexualized all the women in the movie are this time, more than like even like there's that woman at McDonald's that the cop is getting McDonald's food from.
Yeah.
That he hits on, and it's kind of like Luc Besson's future is like hyper sexualized women and no manly men except for one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hated it when I watched it, but hearing you guys talk about it, I think there are some things to appreciate about it that I couldn't really notice because there were just a lot of things I couldn't get over when I was watching it.
Yeah, I think it's like the missing the phone call for the.
Missing the phone call. I guess that's one bit where I wasn't paying attention, but
no, but I'm using that as like a metaphor for your whole thing. It's like maybe you missed the good parts because the bad parts were distracting you too much.
Yeah, well, and then just some things like that were on the edge of working didn't quite work because like you guys appreciated the things coming together, but I just still felt like it was one coincidence. I didn't feel like they were set up enough for me. I felt like it was one coincidence after another, and that things just felt like they were like it seemed like every. I think this is actually something Matt said when we were watching it, but like it felt like every scene was like one scene behind in terms of setup.
I wrote down that every scene is one half of a scene behind being set up properly, and because like it's impossible to go back and rewatch something with completely fresh eyes, but even rewatching it this time, I was like when you explained the whole how it happened that like everyone thought that they had Corbin but they didn't actually, and so on, like that kind of thing. It like I'm not stupid, but it does help to really make sure that that all of the important points have been conveyed. And there's actually so much going on in this movie. Like that's one of the things that I like about it is there's so much going on in it. And very often it's just like next thing. And you were paying attention, but you didn't process the last thing that happened sufficiently that you actually understand the ramifications on the next thing that's already now happening.
Yeah.
So it's like the pace. I mean, the simplest way to say it is the pace is too fast.
I think that's actually fair. And thinking about the whole comedy of errors that leads to the airport scene, this is the first time in my viewing that I've noticed that the dude who like looks into the camera on the door and says "smoke you" to the cops that they kill and take, that is the same guy that the aliens dress up as when they're pretending to be Corbin. This is like the first time I've noticed that, and maybe
I didn't notice it until you explained it a minute ago, and then my brain remembered that's what his face looked like. But
because it's just you see him so quickly, and it's like through a viewing, like a altered colored viewing device thing, so you don't really get a good look at the guy. So you just don't know, and you're right, it moves quickly. Like I think part of the reason why I like the movie is because it doesn't stop to explain a lot of the world, but then also the movie doesn't stop to explain a lot of the plot. And I can see why that would hurt it for sure.
Yeah, there's that stuff, but I think that the fatal flaw for me is just like I couldn't get behind any of the characters, particularly the main characters, because it seemed like Mila Jovovich was set up as an object just right away, and that's all I saw her as was like Luke Besson's fetish, basically, and Bruce Willis was a fairly boring like stand-in action hero to me. I didn't really.
He's John McClane in space.
Sort of. I mean, I actually think John McClane was a bit deeper because you learn about like his family history and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think Die Hard's a better movie than this for sure.
Yeah, it characterizes him. Whereas here, you learn something in the phone call about how he broke up with someone who wasn't really that important, and he's waiting for the perfect girl, and then he meets the perfect girl. And then, they're, like you said, their relationship, their budding love wasn't really well done, so I didn't buy that, and that was, fairly central to one of the themes of the movie. So I think just those things made it so that I couldn't appreciate a lot of the other things that you guys were talking about. But
yeah. All right, so that is The Fifth Element. Thanks again for The Man Who Was. I don't know if we ever would have sat down to talk about this movie if it wasn't for them. So thank you. And thanks for your Patreon support. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. I haven't watched this movie in who knows how long, and I was happy at the opportunity to not only watch it, but think about it.
Yeah. All right, so real quick before we wrap up, I just wanted to do like a mini segment of me recommending a movie. If you guys have anything you want to recommend, go for it. But
Doof.
We're going to need a better thing than this. All right, so I wanted to recommend Bo Burnham's 8th Grade. It's a movie. It's in wide release right now, and I recommend you guys all see it. It is a movie about a 13-year-old girl in her last week of 8th grade, and it's about we were talking about social media and how it rules our life, and it's not a movie that's necessarily being critical of social media, but it's a movie that's like just exploring how, in the mind of a very young person, how much it is an escape for you and how much it controls and pressures social interactions and how you lead your life. And I think it's an incredible movie that's so sharply written. The person who plays the main character, I'm forgetting her name right now, but she is phenomenal. Like this girl's going to be a great actress. I think she's only 15 too. Like, so she was really close to the age of the character she was playing. It's such a good movie. Bo Burnham has this just such a way of capturing how people feel. And like, I was obviously not an 8th grade girl, but I was in 8th grade. And I think this movie completely captures what it's like to be a teenager, except now it's like, it seems so much worse than when we were kids because of how social media changes all these things. And I think it's just wonderful. Everyone needs to see it.
I'm terrified, but I probably will.
Yeah, and I think it's a rated R movie, which is a bummer, because I think it's a movie that 13-year-olds should go see. And I think it's a perfect example of why the MPAA rating system just sucks, because it's rated R because she says fuck 4 times, and that's really it. Because they won't let you say the F word more than once, or they're going to give you rated R.
Is that still a bad word in 2018?
According to the MPAA, it is.
I don't fucking know, man.
But Bo Burnham actually did a really cool thing, and A24, the studio that released this movie, on Wednesday this week, they released it at a theater in each of the 50 states, and they were like free tickets, which means the MPAA only controls like selling. So if the theaters agree to give the tickets away for free, you can. Like, they won't enforce the rating. So basically they just invited a bunch of 8th graders to come see the movie for free on Wednesday at theaters across the country. And I thought that was really cool because it's kind of them, venting their frustration about the rating they got. Because
super. Yeah, that's clever.
It's a very, very wonderful movie. I think probably one of my favorite movies of the year, if not outright my favorite movie of the year. That's 8th Grade. It's out now. Go see it. Anything you guys had? Or we just want to wrap this thing up?
I'd like to recommend Bo Burnham's "Art Is Dead" song.
I'd like to recommend Bo Burnham in general.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen anything recently to recommend. So
all right, so then that is all we have for you guys this week. Let us know what you think about social media, about Fifth Element, or about that movie 8th Grade by reaching out to us via email. It's doofmedia@gmail.com or on Twitter @doofmedia. We do try to respond to just about every message we get, so feel free to reach out.
Yeah, and if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found.
We've got tons of great content and more new stuff coming up every day. You can find all this over at our brand new shiny website, doofmedia.com. And if you like what we do here and want to support us, you can consider becoming a patron of Doof Media. Head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia. You can pledge $1 a month or whatever else you can afford to help keep ensure we make new stuff. You can be like the man who made this episode happen. Thank you once again, the man who was, for producing this episode. We got to talk Fifth Element. It was cool.
Also, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content we make here. We've got a new review this week from Nerdy BC, who gives us 5 stars and says, and I apologize, I'm going to do a voice here because Scott put it in the script.
I did not do that.
I was introduced to this podcast by my teacher, and it's become one of my favorites. It is so interesting to listen to you guys and hear your point of views and go into depth with shows and movies. I love the news portion because I end up learning something new, and I love your recommend shows at the end of the episode. This is definitely a podcast I would recommend to a fellow nerd. Keep up the great work.
Let the record show that Scott put no notes in the script to do it in that voice, but I wish I had now. I wish I had. All right, guys, have a great week. We will see you next time.
Doof.